Journey of refinement, but really, Barry, our nickname is the journey. This is the journey. And the journey means you're on a path and you're going to get stronger all the time. And we're going to give you a game plan to do it. Are you ready to view this next screen?
I'm ready. I'm ready. Let's do it.
Okay. So gang, this is it. We have worked on this for so many years, and we call this the journey. And we have here really basically 30 different stops on the journey. We honestly have more than this. It just seemed a bit overwhelming. And logically, we wanted to basically say, look, as you're looking to get better every month, don't just wait till the end of the period and try to repair the items or vendors that miss service. And we definitely we're gonna help you through this, go into inventory sectors. But look at all these different areas where every company could probably enhance what they're doing and get stronger and stronger. And if you focus it this way, if you say that every month, every couple of weeks, if you say that you're going to be on a path or a journey, you're going to tackle every one of these areas and get stronger at it, your results go deeper and deeper. And we've seen this. We have both been part of implementing, honestly, hundreds of replenishment teams, with their systems. We learned so much through it all. And a lot of people say, okay, is this the order, Barry, that we need to go in? Like, are we saying they should start and get stronger at forecast accuracy and then seasonality? And
I don't think so.
No, that feels like it'd be easy to follow. But think of all the companies out there. One company might have the biggest need in area number 13.
Right.
So they ought to go there first. So that gives a little challenge, but we kind of like that. We basically are suggesting that you put your journey together that fits your needs, right? So here's what we're doing, Barry. We're going on a trip. We're going on a journey. I'm going on a journey, and I'm taking with me.
Well, of course, you are taking the depletion graph. How could you not?
It doesn't start with an A. I was waiting for you to say apple or something. But you said depletion. Okay, that's fine. So Barry's going on a trip. He's taking the depletion graph everywhere he goes, to every meeting, to every coaching session. I agree. So I'm going on that same type of trip. I'm going to take your depletion graph, and I'm going to take these 7 essential steps of buying.
Right.
Now, we're not going to go through the whole alphabet, but know this. When you sit down to do this work, you should have both of these with you all the time. I know we have some people on the line here. Wow, they just keep coming. We have people on the line here that in their inventory teams on the wall, they have huge pictures of these 2 things, and you huddle around it, because when you have issues, opportunities, if you're looking for inventory reduction, you always come to these areas and say, where do we need to tackle?
Yeah, think about it. We have done sessions through the years. The most elementary introductory session has those 2 pieces.
That's right.
And the most advanced session that we've ever done has those 2 pieces.
And we still go there.
Yeah.
We still need it as our checklist. When somebody says we're missing service, boom, we go to the checklist and we go down through it. So why not have the journey do the same thing? And the journey is not just 7 stops, because every one of these essential elements, they have a bunch of little pieces within them, right, where everybody can get stronger and stronger. So Barry and I got together over the holidays and said, all right, they're going to want to know what we're going to cover. We can't cover everything in this session. So we grabbed these. These are the ones that we're going to cover right now. And we're not going to go in exact numeric order, not exact, but we'll start that way. Here's what we'll cover, but know that all these others could be great conversations that we could have sometime, or as you just said, great sessions to have in the future.
Right.
So with that, why don't we get going? I'll go ahead and I'll start with number 2. I know you like sequential.
I'm okay with that.
So here's the idea. We've talked a little about this in the last 2 sessions. Just a reminder, when you look at this depletion graph, and sometimes people forget, they can see clearly that the safety stock component, the lead time of the order cycle, the number 1 component and the most important is right here, that demand forecast. Not only does it tell you how you're going to deplete, it's a reminder that it crosses all of the other steps. It influences all of these other steps. And you want to have a great forecast, But if it is a seasonal item that sells in any kind of pattern and you don't have that seasonal profile or forecast, what could actually be happening is this. You're expecting the yellow, the red actually happens. Sure, it could happen on the other side, but when it happens on this side, you get hurt and you feel it and you're not sure what occurred. And a reminder is that everybody has a lot more seasonality than they thought. We see people get hurt here all the time, and sometimes they just don't realize it. So I'm going to ask you a question, Barry.
Okay.
You're the expert these days in training, especially. When you talk to somebody about seasonality,
yeah,
and they throw some of those hurdles at you like we don't have it, how do you define seasonality to basically get them to open their eyes?
Okay. Well, you're right. There are plenty of hurdles that we get thrown at us, and have through the years. But it's really this, gang. It is an item that has, and you'll see at the bottom, predictable, repetitive type of pattern. And I'll throw something in that is not flat, because you can have predictable, repetitive that is flat, but you have predictable, repetitive pattern that is not flat, that's year over year, ideally 2 years. Well, really, ideally 3 years. 2 years is okay.
Mm-hmm.
But really, that's it. And that is centered on certain events that happen throughout the year.
Right.
Events that we all know about sometimes as holidays, or events that you drive in your own businesses, whether it's promotions during certain times of the year. I know for us, it was spring and the fall. So those were two, heavily seasonal, areas. But it's that, in its simplest form. And we've always said through the years, even though conceptually you guys probably look at it and say, well, yeah, of course, I understand that. I understand multi-holiday, I understand summer, winter, but know this, it's the last area that they master. It has been for years, and it continues to be. Because
across all companies, isn't it?
Right.
Across all companies. So just knowing that, I think, takes a little pressure off of them. Something we want to point out is we do a ton of analysis nowadays, especially with today's analytics. Every company, almost every analyst within every company performs better on items that they have profiled versus items that they don't.
All right.
Always the way, which really means they have a lot more seasonality than they realize. So a lot of the items in this category are seasonal. They just haven't recognized it yet.
Yeah, I know.
Which is why you and I highlighted some of these others as a reminder. So this is some of the stuff we like to view. How did you do last period? Not just on all the items and not just on the A items, but as you think about these others, here's a couple of thoughts. I'll throw one or two, you throw one or two as well. One of them is this. We find very often people put seasonal profiles on their A items, and they do really well, but they don't take the time to do it on the slow movers where you normally need generic profiles. But the bottom line is these are seasonal also, a lot of them. So you can't leave them without. So I'll just mention that one.
Yeah, you can't. And we'll talk about new items in a bit, but new items, that is such a troublesome area for us. And oftentimes we should apply a profile to a new item that's maybe an addition to the product assortment, but there's almost this hands-off approach. Oh, I can't apply a profile to a new item, can I? Or I can't apply seasonality to a new item, can I? Well, yeah, of course you can.
Sure.
They tend to stay away from it.
So think about it. If somebody has 30% of their items profiled, 30% of their new items ought to be profiled also, probably. Just have to borrow the profile from another item.
Right.
That leads to this one, Barry, the long lead times. When you're buying for 50 days down the road, 90 days, 100 days down the road, how important is it? How much more important is it that if it's a seasonal item, you have that right profile on there? So you said they normally master this area last, but it's so critical that they do master this area, even if one person on the team becomes the expert and really helps everybody else.
Right. And those longer lead times, it really hurts you because the reaction time is so long.
It really is. So I'm going to do a couple things. This is, again, a reminder of a really cool feature out on the Planning Post site, and that's the community-based idea of all these surprisingly seasonal items, following the idea that most companies have at least 3 times as many items with seasonality as they thought. But that number 3, let me throw this at you. What are 3 pitfalls, 3 mistakes analysts often make in this area of seasonality?
Yeah. Wow. Well, there are many, many more, but the common ones we see, gang, are number one, and I know this from personal experience, did it myself, over smoothing the profile curve, the seasonal profile curve to make that beautiful curve when it may not describe reality. We've always said you have to describe reality, right? The other one is neglecting to adjust seasonal profiles for seasons that jump around. And the one that jumps out at me right now is Easter. It moves around. So if you're not adjusting that profile, then you've got the red line that you showed a minute ago that is on many of those depletion pictures.
Yeah. Always on a Sunday though, right?
Right. And then another one is ignoring items that might have that slight seasonality. You know, we talked about the characteristics. It's predictable, it's repetitive pattern that's not flat. Ideally, 3 years, 2 years are okay. But if you have slight seasonality, those are the ones that are hard to identify. But you got to latch onto those and apply the seasonal profile to those, because you are missing opportunities there if you aren't. And that is a common pitfall.
It's a great point, because even if it goes from 1.2 to 0.8, it doesn't seem like a lot. But not only will you hit service, you'll do it with lower inventory all year long. So it's a big benefit. All right, great point. Great point. Key area. Obviously, we could do a day on just that area, but we don't have that kind of time.
I love that. I love that slide there, just all those examples.
I do too. Okay, let's hit one that we don't get a chance to hit that often, and it's a one where we have to, I think, go into the definition. The generic term is super vendors and sub vendors. That's the generic term, Barry, and it's a reminder that this is all within the order cycle area, so step 3. And on the depletion, it's all within this area here. All the stuff that can influence this area here, whether it's going to a sub or a super. And so we're highlighting that. We're highlighting the fact that I've got maybe an average 14-day order cycle. The effective number, because of buying multiples and such, is 20. But let's hit what we're really talking about. And some people, especially if they're already on the Blue Ridge solution, they've got these tools of the group supplier tool and the ship point tool.
Right.
I'll mention for me on this side for starters, and that is, I had a chance. What's great is our counting system was kind of limited. We had one vendor ID, regardless of how many plants, all that stuff. But I knew we had opportunities. So if I was in Atlanta buying from the West Coast, I could take 2 or 3 suppliers, put a truckload together. And by doing that, I reduced my cycle stock. We'll show a picture of that in a minute. Maybe I'm buying now every 10 days instead of every 3 weeks from each of those. And I've got freight savings, so freight efficiency. I've got reduced cycle stock inventory. I'm hitting some truckload benefits that I never had before. And there were some pitfalls I had to watch for. I had to do it properly with a good system. So it still told me when the overall group was due, because all of a sudden that group of 2 or 3 suppliers was a replenishment supplier. But what a great tool that was for us. And I worked with our transportation team, and boy, we just kept adding to it and a ton of benefits. And that's building up. But you can also build down from a vendor, can't you?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So, what we were able to do in the business I was in, and I see many on this call are in the same industry that I was in, which is the HVAC, heating, ventilation, air conditioning. And for us, our number one supplier was Carrier. So pretty much what they said went. So they made us do some pretty unique things, but we knew we had a great system to manage that business because they have equipment, they have parts, and with equipment, they had residential and then they had commercial.
Yeah.
So the residential, it had a different plant. It was in Syracuse, New York. Carrier Dome. For those Orangemen out there, I'm not one, but there you go.
Ahead of its time.
That's right. So you had a plant in Syracuse, New York for the residential equipment. You had a plant for the commercial equipment that was all the way in Tyler, Texas. So they're completely, they're worlds apart basically. So we use the ship point functionality to be able to snap,
Into 2.
Yeah, break those apart. Did the same thing with the parts as well. So all the parts that goes to the equipment, we broke up the one Carrier supplier into motors, contactors, relays, compressors, fan motors, and it just made you're managing the business uniquely
Yeah.
that way.
That's a great point. So, as many benefits as there are, we always warn analysts to be careful of pitfalls because some will grab hold. And I'm glad you described where that functionality came from, why it was born. It's just for that type of purpose. We've seen some analysts that say, I'm going to break my supplier down into 3 parts just because I like to think of these items differently. Maybe it's fast movers, slow movers, and so forth. And you can do that, but in that situation, when they do that, they're still coming from the same plant, and that should all still be the same replenishment vendor, one button to hit with the same order cycle. Now, in your case, you were really talking, it was different vendors.
Right.
So it could be different order cycles, even different lead times and so forth. But so those that are using it the other way, make sure you keep it still as one, one order cycle. In fact, we'll go to a couple of pictures. I described the group supplier and what a benefit. I would take 3 vendors. One had an order cycle of 24 days, 129, 121. By grouping them together, I could do a truckload every 10 days. And Barry, that's a big cycle stock savings,
Nice.
not to mention the freight savings. And then as you described, here we took a look, by the way, at an analyst recently. These are their suppliers. And sometimes you see multiple sub or, those situations, those
Right.
ship point situations.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really proud of this analyst here because they broke it up, not for different plant reasons, just to view it differently, but they kept it together, same cycle, 8 days both, and they're accepting it as one. So that's something we always kind of watch for to make sure that's being done right.
Yep.
Gang, if you're managing a group of analysts, make sure you follow up and look at this type of thing. Make sure they didn't misunderstand the functionality because you could actually really increase your inventory the wrong direction. If this buyer here had said, I'll make this one 12 days and this one 24 days, that would have been messy. So good. I'm glad we covered that because we rarely do. And then you always have to stop, I believe, at this one. And I know we covered it in one of the other sessions, but we can't not cover it because there's so much value here. Buying multiples is such a part of the order cycle. And we've realized it so much more in the past year. So many good inventory teams have tackled this. So we pulled this picture back up because we basically said, hey, here is a company that has to do this well. They're in the food business. And they break their inventory down here into their fast movers, the A items, the B items, the C. And Barry, look at this. On their A items, their buying multiples are set to an average of only 2 days, meaning on that depletion graph, on those key A items, they're not overshooting the order up 2 level, which can be really expensive.
Yeah, this is a beautiful pattern to follow, isn't it?
It is.
It is ideal.
I know you have a picture of this in your family room, and I don't blame you. But we both worked with a wholesaler last year. They realized their picture did not look this way. They wanted to tackle it quickly. They asked us to put some tools together, and they said, let's just look at the really high value items to start. So we helped them do that, and it was, look at that, less than 200 items. But in those 200 items, that was $5 million worth of inventory. And look at this. These were their A items, and they were averaging not 2 days, but 21 days on their buying multiples. They'd gotten really aggressive and really had listened to the vendor saying, I'd love for you to buy in pallets and multiple pallets all the time. Well, I know you put this tool together for them, and it helped them see, here's their forecast, their 4-weekly forecast, and then the buying multiple days. Look at this one. Their buying multiple days on this one was 41 days worth. Forecast was 862 per 4-week period, and they were buying 1920. And I really think the vendor had suggested this, and the analyst said, okay. They went in and made adjustments. Their inventory came down dramatically from this.
Yeah, it's a beautiful story you see the picture of the inventory reduction because of this.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. And when we were talking about the journey and not going in alphabetical order, Dan was asking me, boy, do we start over here to the left where demand forecast, then lead time, then order cycle, and then the journey takes you to the opportunity areas. That's it. So they realize, hey, we've got buying multiple opportunities here, attacked it. That was at the top of their list. That was the first stop on their journey, wasn't it?
Top of their list. And I think for a lot of people listening, it should be the top of their list also, especially if they hit the low hanging fruit like this. So this was one analyst, by the way, and for the whole team, buying multiple in days went from 13 to 7. That brings the whole effective order cycle down. Inventory dropped considerably, and that opportunity sits out there for everybody. So here's the question. What does your picture look like? Does it look like this? And if you're not sure, go find it. This could be the biggest opportunity you have this year. There are inventory teams out there, Barry, that are still on the shoulders of the company playing hero from the inventory reduction just from this area, just from that area. So that's a great one. And we're moving on down the line. We've got to hit service level.
Yeah, how can we not?
We could spend a day here, right? But let's just hit a couple of kind of graphical views. As a reminder, when we say service level, and that's one of the key steps here, one of the essential elements, you're dialing in the service level. Those using an advanced system like Blue Ridge, that's really driving them the safety stock. I think people are still surprised when they realize there's more math that goes into getting the safety stock right than that goes into the demand forecasting. When I say more detailed math that's required to do that. And one of the reasons is this, just a reminder, you and I always say, everybody in the company ought to know this picture, right? Did you ever cover this at Mingledorff's when you were buying?
Oh yeah, we did. When we went on our Mad About Inventory tour, we sure did.
That was your name of your tour?
That was it, yeah.
Wow, I like it.
Yeah.
And you tell them, when they go from an 80 to a 90% service goal, what happens? Safety stock doubles. 90 to 95, doubles again. To 97.5, doubles again. Look how it goes up exponentially. Everybody in the company needs to realize this. You and I always do the detailed simulations to show that from 95 to 99, it's about a 40% increase in inventory dollars. Right, that's big. Now, here's the couple of pictures we wanted to hit. You and I love putting pictures together to help teams and analysts see their numbers. And this is actually a whole analyst. It's all their items. A lot of items are sitting behind other little bubbles here. And this kind of makes sense. Look at the curve here, Barry. Here's their number one item in sales. Sorry, I don't have the sales scale down here. Number one item in sales is at 99.5, which it should be. Mm-hmm. What I don't get, and this is why you always build this view for them, I know, why is the number two item in sales not also up here? Why is it 4 steps down, all the way down at 97? Yeah. It probably was way back here when they did the settings and wasn't selling as well. And now it is, and they haven't caught it. They need to have the tools together to catch this stuff and get them up into the right spots. This one here also.
Yeah, those jump out at you pretty easily on a picture like this, don't they?
They do. And then you have other filters, and you can really see this stuff and see what needs to move. Now, this company overall did a good job, right? You're seeing a pretty good curve, which is why these now can jump out so clearly. Our suggestion is have something like this so that every month those handful of items jump out at you knowing that you need to move them.
Yeah. And you said a moment ago, this company did a pretty good job, meaning pretty good, meaning really good job. As many of you do a really good job. So the challenge we often face is we can't find very easily these items that are out of sync.
Yeah.
We can't find them, or we find out about them after the fact when we're out of stock or we don't have enough on order that's coming in to support business. Mm-hmm. And you want to be more proactive, hitting everyone else instead of someone coming to you saying, hey, what's going on here?
I think when you and I first got a hold of analytics, I think this is the first graph we built.
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
Yes.
And we were jumping up and down in excitement because we're just nerdy in that way of inventory management. Now you might say, hey, but this is really about doing an ABC in dollars or in units, and you can do this in dollars or units or even profit. But what about profit? Well, you can follow it up. So there's so many other views. Here's a suggestion. As you tackle your service strategy, make it smarter and smarter and smarter. Go outside of just the ABC. This is not a live view. If it was live, we would do all kinds of clicking, but take a look at this, because for this company, we've got their net profit margins. And take a look. We've got items that lose money. That's a shame. Low margin, 50% plus. You don't see a lot of orange, but you see a little. But I'm seeing a lot of pink.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really good. 30 to 40% net profit margins. Now, I'm thrilled to see that most of those items are up in the 99 plus, where they should be. But take a look down here. Here's the beauty of a tool like this. To quickly, I could click and just say, show me the pink that's below 97 or below 98. And you'd see this grouping and this grouping and this grouping. Those are items that should probably move on up the ladder, shouldn't they?
Yeah, absolutely. And a unique view like this, I mean, net profit margin isn't unique to all of us, right? But seeing it as it relates to your service level strategy is eye-opening. It should be eye-opening, because now you can see these areas where, oh, wow, we missed this. We missed these somehow, and we need to take action, right?
That's right. And so what I love to do is, whenever I'm at some kind of gathering, I always like to ask, how are you setting service levels? How are you setting service levels? Yeah. And you learn so many things, but where do you ask that? You asked that, Barry, at Blueprint 2020.
Oh, when did you slide that in? Yes.
Seriously,
yeah.
If you go to an event like that, isn't that a great place
Sure.
to find out?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And historically, what is the one thing we have, through the years, always had a discussion around? Service level. Service level, it always seems to be a very important topic that customers are very interested in knowing how others are doing it.
How do you set them? How do you report them? How do you manage them?
And the ones who are doing it really good, man, they are excited to tell others the breakthroughs that they have achieved by doing it right.
That's right. That's right. Isn't it nice that there's still some days left before the January 31st early bird pricing deadline? These guys are so lucky to get on here, is to know that, to jump in. And you can wait till the 31st, but why not just go in now and click? Yeah. Okay, continuing on the journey. Here's a unique one. We struggle to tell you the name of this one. Right now we're calling it Is It Due, which is similar to a couple of song titles. Is It Due is all about not just these components, but replenishment. We get so focused on setting the components that if you aren't also really diligent about disciplined replenishment, you really miss the boat. So we always say, the key to lowering inventory is to buy later. Key to raising service is to buy earlier. Key to lowering inventory is to buy later. So let's bring up some slides that look similar to ones we used last time.
Right.
Here's the depletion graph. Those using even, an advanced system like Blue Ridge, you come in and it says, hey, the order is due. Mathematically, the order is due to be bought. That's great. But we have a company that is using it and said, you know what? We decided to really do a push of saying, is it really due? They're in the mode of cleaning up all their components. Is it really due? It says here, are your culprits really due? In other words, let's say most of the items are in pretty good position, but one item or two items are triggering it to be due. And sometimes that's it. You can kind of tell through the tools where it's not all the items coming due together. It's just a couple that are really triggering it. And I'll come back and I'm going to ask you a question on this, but here's what can happen. If some of these culprits cause it, and maybe they're not truly due, maybe one of the components is wrong, then they trigger the buy, which is a big investment, because then everything here, which still wanted to deplete down, it bounces up and buys back to here. Plus, it then looks and says, do I need to hit a minimum or bracket? So it's often additional days of investment. And this might happen when these aren't really due. We've heard companies that have cleaned things up and they're buying later, and it's a huge savings. So here's a question to you. When do you see these? What are some of the culprits that you see that show as due that aren't really? What should they watch for?
Well, first of all, what you said a moment ago, there are items that truly are low stock point checks. They're below their order points. Those are the period to date runaways. You had some demand on a handful of items and they're just ahead of the line. That's not what we're talking about.
No.
What we're talking about is where you have incorrect settings. I'll go back to the very first picture you showed, or one of the first ones, which is the seasonal profile.
Yeah.
If it is off, then you potentially are you're gonna adjust that low stock point. I mean, think about it, gang. When any of the components that we talk about, seasonal profiles, or you've got the wrong service level on an item, like we showed a moment ago, or the other slide, the wrong buying multiple, all of those components impact what? Safety stock. And when safety stock's impacted, well, it's moving your low stock point around. It's moving that item order point around. Sometimes you might have items that show up just like the ones in this scenario. Components are off and they're sitting at a low stock point when they really are not.
So Barry, if I have a vendor and it has a 14-day order cycle like this one, and I bought 5 days ago and it's popping up due again, you're telling me that I should say, what happened?
Right. What's going on
What
here?
is going on? Because something's probably messy.
Right. If it's not the runaway item,
yeah,
like I talked about, if it's not that, then you got to go digging somewhere else.
And if I just click and buy the thing, what I'm doing is I'm just topping off and I'm adding the inventory and I never get the inventory down to where it could go.
Absolutely. The topping off is, the numbers are staggering if you look at them across organizations that do that.
Yes.
And they don't really necessarily realize that.
They focus so much on saying my 4 components, I'm managing other stuff, but this is an area. And maybe this year, this is their big area. Because companies that have said we're going to focus on it have seen tremendous inventory reduction.
Right.
How about a quick one? How about a one-slide one? Held and reserved. Okay, so held and reserved, this stuff can be kind of hidden, can it?
Oh, yeah.
One of the beauties of analytics is not only can you have this stuff pop up to you in graphics, you can have it emailed to you when it gets above certain numbers, or just every month, show me my picture.
Yeah.
If we asked our audience to guess how much they had in held and reserved across their companies, how close do you think they would be in their guesses?
You put me on the spot here, but I would say probably off a fair amount.
Probably off a lot.
Yeah.
Which is why you got to go find it. Go see what it is. So here's a company that allowed us just to say, okay, it's approaching 100 items, but it's over $400,000 of inventory, and it might be stuff that they'll say, I forgot we put those held or reserved quantities out there.
That's right.
And they just sit there and they linger.
That's right. Sometimes you put it on there because there's a lot of pressure and you're, getting influenced the wrong way to make a decision just to keep the noise level down.
That's right.
For a little while, but then a little while becomes months and months and months because you never go back. And
that's right.
We almost should title this hidden inventory, right?
Yeah.
Because that's really what it is. It's
passive.
Hidden. You don't see it. Ooh, passive. That's an even better name.
Yes. It's a fancy word.
It is.
Okay, so that's a quick one, but it's a key one. So many of these. That's why it has to be on the list. It has to be on the journey. Okay, let's keep it moving because we've got some key stuff to hit. And this is a unique one. We say presenting your business, and that's part of period N. And they might wonder what we mean by that. And that is this. We really picture a profession where we used to only play defense, and now we play offense because the rest of the company is realizing that we're the most important people in the building. We've known it all along.
Right.
They're just seeing it, especially when you take analytics and turn data into stories, turn stories into action, and turn that action into results. Isn't it great? And we see so many companies doing it. When they do good period end programs, they invite leaders in from other departments, and that head of warehousing comes in and he sees that analyst stand up and present their business and say stuff like this. Hey, my business is a unique, complex inventory portfolio of 8,900 items. My $8.5 million in inventory drives $47 million in sales. I'm hitting my service. And then they go down through and they describe their business, and it's impressive. And the key to that is when you present your business, you need to know your numbers. And so we challenge you guys and we challenge everyone, and maybe this is the year you make sure that not only does each person know their numbers, but they learn to stand and present their numbers. Just do it to each other first. When that's going well, pull others in from the rest of the company. Here's what will happen. You will be playing offense rather than defense. You will move from that corner of the building to the center of the building, at least in everybody's minds, which is where our profession belongs. And you know stuff like what percentage of my items are new, and what's my average forecast, and how much do I have in discontinued and manual, and what's happening, what's my average dollar-weighted safety stock. As you learn all of this stuff, you really become a driver of the business, and it's just a whole new level of the profession.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, think of the confidence that you build when you go through an exercise like this. And when I say exercise, it's an exercise initially in opening up your eyes to your business, but then it becomes part of what you do. And then it easily just rolls off of your tongue. Here's how much inventory I manage.
Yeah.
Here's the service level I'm achieving. Here's the sales volume that I'm driving. Here are the percentage of items that are new. And the list goes on and on and on. It just builds confidence in truly knowing your business.
And some might be saying, you mean, do other departments really do this? Yes, this is happening. It's impressive to watch. A lot of them learn some great presentation skills, and it's amazing what it does to the department in whole. Now that's part of it. The other part of the period end is really that performance spotlight. And you know us, we've been pushing and pushing and pushing to go beyond saying, I missed service by 1.5 points, or I missed service on this vendor or this item, this group of items. Go beyond and realize there are patterns in these inventory sectors, as we call them, all these different sectors, of which some are a blend of new items that are seasonal, new items that are slow, and so forth. And to be able to look now, especially with analytics, and say, oh, I'm doing very poorly on new items. It's not a big part of my business now, but I need to get better. Where I have a manual forecast, I'm not doing as well. Just to see where you're doing well and poorly. And what you and I have found, and others, others in the profession, is these patterns are common across. Like, we know how many do poorly in new items, but we also know how often people do poorly on short order cycle or even short lead time. Just like on the short order cycle, here one buyer just recently realized, wow, I do well overall, but on my order cycles that are 7 days and less, I'm missing by multiple points. And he's not alone. Others in the same company were doing that, and others across different inventory groups and other companies had the same problem. But now that they can see this stuff, it's changing everything.
Yeah, I mean, that's it. To be able to truly take your data and stories to action, action to results, you have to know your business. And the best way to see your business is in a view like this, where you can dive in, drill down, go a little bit deeper, and uncover what the actual issue is.
It's never just item by item. There are patterns.
Right. There are patterns. And sometimes those patterns are self-inflicted by things that we can control. And then there are times where service level is out of our control, but just knowing which camp it falls in is a great first step.
It is. Hey, Barry, we're about to hit the last two areas, but on buying multiple, question hit, can you just describe what buying multiple, what it is? Because some people use different terms.
Yeah, sure. So buying multiple is the case pack that you buy in. Now that case pack might be a case, it might be a layer, it might be a pallet, but it's generally designed around a multiple, if you will, from the supplier.
Yeah.
So in its simplest form, that's it. Now sometimes we get, like we were talking about earlier, you get pulled in one direction or another by warehouse and operations or by the supplier to buy in that multiple. But the ideal strategy is to understand how an item sells and then marry up that multiple to buy it properly based on how the item sells.
You brought up a good term. Some people do call it a rounding multiple.
Yeah.
You could have 10 items in a vendor and you can buy them in any way, but based on that forecast, some you'll buy in eaches, some you buy in a case or maybe a master case. Some have enough demand where a full layer makes sense when you buy, and some it's a full pallet.
Right.
And those those settings can change even month to month as you go into and out of a season or as the item grows. And so it's an ongoing, adjustment.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So we've got a couple left, Barry. And this first one is new items. We hit it a bit on a previous one, so we'll go quickly through it. But we just want to remind everybody, because everybody continues to struggle on new items. And gang, just as a reminder, we're just going to hit this number and say, there's a value of 3. If 5% of your items are new, it ought to be 15% of your time invested. You can't approach these the same way as others. So here's some of the pitfalls. Of these pitfalls, Barry, one of the main ones is just not having a unique new item strategy, And you already mentioned number 2, borrowing the profile from a proven item. Right. So not using proven components from other items. So, here are some of the pitfalls, but here's what we see. We'll see that for that person that stands up and presents their business, if they know it well, they'll say, well, for me, 5% of my items are new right now. It makes up 8% of my inventory dollars, but it's only driving 3% of my sales. And I'm only achieving 89% service. This picture right here says, okay, we got to do better. And we need custom reports and tools and processes just for new items, which rarely happens, which is why we say, once you decide to think of it this way, everything changes, doesn't it?
Completely.
Now, the last time we kind of showed this, we're not going to take minutes on this, but just know that when you set up a new item, really take the time. Some people just slap a forecast, but that's just one of those components. Borrowing a profile, knowing it's going to have unique deviation range, all of those things are really, part of that.
Yeah, exactly. Modeling it after something that already exists.
Right.
Right.
Here's one we haven't hit enough the past couple of sessions, overstock. Yep. Gosh, it's like new items because everyone needs to get better. And basically what we're talking about is we're talking overstock, but we call it true overstock.
Mm-hmm. And did you ever you didn't really have this issue.
That's my problem. I had very little experience because I never had overstock when I bought, but I know some people that did.
He's looking at me.
Yeah, no, we all had it. So first of all, here's some problems and pitfalls.
Yeah.
Most companies really don't have a great strategy. Most focus on overstock in days or dollars rather than the overstock carrying cost burden that we talk about.
Right.
Most make it a project once a year, twice a year, or when there's a panic and inventory is high. And that's not the way to do it. Most try to fly solo and not get others involved when they have some great knowledge. And not making the supplier part of that team, that's a big mistake.
Yeah.
So all of this stuff, and just a quick reminder, you can have a year's worth of overstock, but that's not the focus because the dollars might be so low that it's just not a big deal in terms of the carrying cost burden. You might have only 90 days of overstock, but it could be a big burden because of the carrying cost involved until it gets down to a normal level. So Barry, we always focus on what is that overstock carrying cost burden, and we sort the list that way.
Right.
That's so critical.
That's the way to attack it. That's where it's hurting you.
If you're printing a report that's an over 90 days or over so many dollars or over so many units, you don't get overstock and you're going to approach it in the wrong way.
Yeah. You're probably focusing on a lot of the carrying cost burden that's 25 or below.
Yeah.
Potentially, right?
Yeah. And sometimes those reports come from your CFO side. You got to battle them and say there's a better way to do it.
Yeah.
By the way, true overstock also understands, that's a key word. True overstock understands all of these components. It understands seasonality. Barry, you just defined buying multiples. It knows that if you've said, I have to buy in dozens, and this item only sells 2 a month, that 6-month supply is not overstock. It's just simply how we have to buy. It could be a buying multiple or a required minimum. Right. A forward buy, you make a great deal, you made the company a bunch of money, and somebody says that, oh, that's overstock. No, it's not. There's a reason for that.
Right.
So it takes a lot to really be able to show true overstock, but it's worth it. It's worth having a great tool that shows that to you, that understands all of this and how to financially show it.
Right. If you don't understand all of the pieces that created the original order to begin with, whether it's a promotional order, an investment buy order, then you're potentially going to be treating, like you said, treating investment inventory or promotional inventory. You're going to put together a strategy to get rid of what you just made a really smart buy on.
That's right. So all this needs to be there. So with this being our last one we're covering, Barry, would you take a second? Because I know you believe quite a bit that overstock victories happen when it's more than one person, when you get others involved. I know you did this. You were often that point person at Mingledorf's years ago. Say a word about
No
about
question about it. It happens in teams. So, you know, and we borrowed what we did there from others that we had learned at conferences like Blueprint back in the day, but it was a collaborative effort. In other words, we didn't just stick within our own team. We looked outside product management, actually brought in sales. How bold of a move was that to bring in somebody on the sales side, merchandising side, even on the accounting side. And it helped us to formulate a plan that was a company-wide plan. It wasn't just our responsibility. It was a company responsibility. We met frequently. We had goals, and we had incentives. And the guy who ran it was not head of our sales team. He was head of one of our product management teams. Yeah. And this guy was a pit bull. He, you know, we had lists that, okay, you're doing this and you're reporting back next time. Okay. Mm-hmm. So you had that type of mentality on the team, and it was contagious. So it became this, you know, like a tiger team. Hey, we're going to attack this and we're going to make it happen. And it became this, you know, there was a mantra that the company bought into. So as we've shared that story through the years, there have been companies who've borrowed pieces of that to put together the plan. We also included suppliers. Right. Not in every meeting, but about every 4 to 6 weeks. And it was great. So you had this collaborative effort. It's interesting, guys, when you bring in these different personality styles and the different departments, the true eye-opening experience everybody has in realizing, hey, this is a company issue. And especially when they can be, have an incentive attached to it. And then they can show that, hey, I can do something and be impressive in front of another group. It's amazing once you get those personality styles in, how you can leverage that.
I think so many people learn when you guys would talk about it, because you would talk about the victories you would celebrate in Overstock. Very few teams out there celebrate Overstock victories, you know, managing Overstock. I think that's a big, big piece. I think it's great you guys were able to capture this picture of one of the meetings with you sitting here helping to lead that, that meeting. So gang, we just covered several steps on the journey. And just as a reminder, Barry, to them is this: the journey we just took them on, we basically went right around the depletion graph here, didn't we? We didn't cover all the steps, but we highlighted in blue the ones we just covered. So where we showed you that view, this is another way to think of your journey. Just think of the areas where you need to work on your journey. And then while you're doing that, think about February, because in February, we talk about the people side of it. In February, we're talking about building a strengths-based team. Boy, we love that one. And we've seen some great victories in that regard. That's Thursday, February 6th. And we want everyone to be there. Look, we've gone 49 minutes. We could have gone hours. We always throw this questions piece up. I know we don't have much time. If somebody throws questions up in the chat window there, we will make comments of them. But a couple reminders is the Blueprint early bird sign up, as well as just jumping on this stuff and putting a plan together for the year to have a journey like this. Guarantee you'll do well, and we'd love to help you along the way. Don't see any special questions coming in. I never know if that's a good sign or a bad. I like to think of it that we covered things so well, they couldn't possibly have questions. I'm sure that's not the case. That Brian guy often has questions later on. was afraid to ask. Brian Seacrest, he's actually shown up several times on the list. Well, look, everyone, we love covering this stuff. We are in a great profession, and we were just talking yesterday. I don't know that there's a better time to be in our profession. It's such an innovative time with the tools and the analytics available. Our profession is soaring. So we've always loved being in it. We're glad you guys are in it also. Always here to help. And hope to see you in the next session, then of course at Blueprint.
Yeah, we appreciate you guys tuning in with us, and we look forward to seeing you in our next session.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.